Five Nights at Freddy's is a horror game that I used to play back in my childhood. Well, I never played the new generation version of Five Nights at Freddy's. I only played the old trilogy of the game, like Five Nights at Freddy's 1, 2, and 3. I might include 4 as well, because I played half of it. Well, back in 2023, when I found out that they made a movie out of Five Nights at Freddy's, I just went crazy, and this is why I am here today. I'm going to compare the Five Nights at Freddy's movie to Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City. Okay, at first, I was going to compare it to the second film, but the recent movie was actually coming out in December, and I wanted to include the Five Nights at Freddy's into the Halloween theme comparison video episode, so there's no way I'm going to wait for 2 months to connect this video into the Halloween special. Well, Resident Evil is a horror game like Five Nights at Freddy's, so it is the only closer thing of the comparison. So with that being said, let's find out which movie based on scary video games is superior. With the battle crash. Okay, the story of Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City, was actually not important, as that I just felt bored. Well, the story for Five Nights at Freddy is supposed to be all about Mike discovering or trying to reunite with his brother, but the story just disappeared for some reason. As soon you get to the part that we get to go to Freddy Fazbear, like honestly, I am not kidding here, it's like it is the only story that they have overall, and they just didn't execute it right for me. Okay, well, Mike having a character development of not abandoning his little sister is good, but it doesn't have much impact with the plot. Well, the plot for the Resident Evil movie from 2021 doesn't make much sense, and I was just underwhelmed with the climax and all. So, which movie has the better story? Well, it's been a while since I watched both of them, so I don't really know, to be honest. But I think it is fair if I rewatch both of these movies to see if my opinion ever changed. So yeah, I think I'm going to rewatch Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City, and Five Nights at Freddy starting right now. So I will be right back. You know what, actually? Five Nights at Freddy's is not on Peacock anymore, and I don't know why. Like, Five Nights at Freddy's is a part of Universal, so there's no reason to get rid of it. And as for Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City, well, it's in the streaming service that I couldn't afford, so I guess I will have to refresh my memory a different way by watching these movie recap videos. So with that being said, I will be right back. Okay, well, I kind of rewatched both of these movies, and my opinion has not changed a bit. But what I must say is that the movie with the superior story is Five Nights at Freddy's, and I'm going to tell you why is that. The highlight of the plot is about Mike trying to search for his little brother who has been kidnapped, and I really do understand him through and through. Well, despite being a slow movie, his character arc is just so damn good. And as for Resident Evil, the characters were just different from the game version, and we will address that in the character segment soon. And the story is just full-on simple, and it does nothing new. Well, it is one of these situations where they attempted a good plot, but it just lacks and failed. So the movie, with a slightly superior story, is the Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Like I said about the Resident Evil characters, they were portrayed differently from the games, and all I see is a totally different character of these characters, and they can be a-holes to each other at times. And they pretty much wasted the relationship between those characters, and even the movie recappers that I just watched criticized this movie for it as well.
Quite disappointing because we all hope that the meeting between Leon and Claire in this movie will be like this.
Don't shoot! Get down!
Well, the Mortal Kombat movie never went out of character with the characters. The only thing that's wrong with them is the bad acting, the writing, and the lack of personality. The characters from Resident Evil, on the other hand, they were just so out of character that it reminded me of why I just can't stand bad movies. Well, the Five Nights at Freddy's movie characters, we have Mike, the main character, who has suffered from the trauma of his sibling being kidnapped, and then we have Abby, Mike's little sister. Well, I thought that's his daughter at first in the trailer, but it is indeed his little sister. Then we have Vanessa, and she was my favorite character of the whole movie. Okay, at first, I just had a problem with her character. I mean, her first interaction with Mike just felt off and unrealistic, and she was pretty much kind of flirting with Mike. Well, it's not just her. A lot of female characters has been flirting with Mike, including Vanessa. I mean, seriously, it's like Mike is a girl magnet attraction, and I even noticed the love relationship between Mike and Vanessa, but with that being said, she is the daughter of the bad man who has been killing children and stuffed them into animatronics, so Vanessa was just scared of her dad, and that is pretty much her whole character, and that explains why she couldn't tell Mike any more enough information until the last minute. Well, in the climax, she was able to stand up to her father. Well, even it means getting put into a coma with a stab through the stomach, or waist, I will say. So overall, I can't wait to see Vanessa's new character arc in the upcoming sequel. Okay, the interaction between the characters might have felt weird, but they did make up for it with the character arc. But at the same time, I kind of felt underwhelmed with their arcs, and when the movie is about to end, well, I was ready for the end credits to roll, and I just don't want to see any more of it. Well, I am about to say it. The movie with the superior characters is undoubtedly Five Nights at Freddy's. Well, I have to admit, the zombies are pretty cool looking. I mean, seriously, they look pretty convincing, and they really help with the horror elements. And that's all I'm going to say. Now we're going to talk about the animatronics from Five Nights at Freddy's. Okay, the first thing that I need to say is that I liked how they made the animatronics look accurate to the games. And they all look cool in this movie too, and I definitely mean it, but I do have my issues with them. Okay, when I used to play the Five Nights at Freddy's games as a kid, well, I always thought the animatronics all have different personality. And I was expecting them to have personality in the movie, but unfortunately, I barely see personality. They're just generic horror monsters that eliminate their victim and also get what they want. And also, the animatronics were just ghost children trapped inside. And even they don't have personality outside of the animatronic suits. I have seen other horror characters that has way more personality and aura of charisma, and this is why I expected better from the animatronics. So overall, I thought the animatronics in the movie are disappointing, and what is also disappointing is that they didn't even do the games right. Like, I was expecting the movie to do a lot similar stuff with the games, like having the animatronics try to go to the office, and the security guard have to close the door and keep on checking the cameras. Well, we never got something like that in the movie, and that is such a real shame. Well, the Super Mario Bros. Movie actually did something from the gameplay, the source material, but Five Nights at Freddy's, the movie, never do any of these stuff. I was just watching just a mystery movie the whole time, and that is just disappointing, and I really hope they make up for it for Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Well, the zombies don't really have personality. Well, in fact, it doesn't need to. Well, despite the horrible looking CGI for a 2021 movie, there were at least good enough horror villains for the heroes to take on. And as for Five Nights at Freddy's, well, there's nothing intimidated about it, and we will talk more about that in the next round. So yeah, I am surprised for what I'm about to say here. The movie with the far superior horror monsters, without a question, is the Resident Evil zombies. Well, like I said, the horror elements was pretty effective with these zombies coming into play, but even I think it was scary, I didn't see myself being scared at all in this movie, because like I said, I was bored. Well, the horror elements in Five Nights at Freddy's, well, it was disappointing. Well, I was expecting to get a jump scared from this movie, but in a good way. But no, it's like this movie was not trying to be scary at all. Okay, well, there are a few parts that is scary, but it just failed as a horror movie overall. None of these jump scares doesn't have an impact. I was still watching this movie like it was nothing. Okay, well, the balloon boy part got me a little bit, but it wasn't enough. I mean, not even the Corey Kenshin cameo would be enough to make it up for it in Uptown. So yeah, there's nothing really scary going on with this movie. It just lacks, and it just falls so flat. Okay, I know some of you are going to say, oh, it's a PG-13 movie. It doesn't need to be that scary, so there's no reason to criticize for it. And you know what? You're right. It is a PG-13 movie, and it doesn't need to be scary. But at the same time, they don't have a excuse to not make it that scary. Let's look at the movie Coraline. Coraline is a scary movie, and it was in fact rated PG. And for a PG movie, this movie was creepy as hell, and that's how good the horror elements was. Like, this movie was so scary that I am even scared of watching it again, and that impacted me not to watch it again as I mentioned this movie. So yeah, this movie was a bit too scary for me, but at the same time, it was actually what I needed. So if Coraline has the balls to go all in with the horror elements, then it shouldn't be a problem for Five Nights at Freddy's movie. And this is why I expected better from a PG-13 movie like Five Nights at Freddy's, and not for something that is borderline unexpected. And plus, I have seen the SML video about Five Nights at Freddy's, and even they make better jump scares than the movie itself. And that's how weak the horror elements was in the, well, FNAF movie. What a stupid name. Like, who call it FNAF anyway? Well, Resident Evil, in my opinion, wasn't that scary, but at least it tries with the horror elements. Five Nights at Freddy's movie just played it too safe, and it does not have the balls to be as scary than I thought is going to be. So yeah, it looks like that Resident Evil gets another point for the superior horror elements. The villain in the Resident Evil movie is some doctor who is a part of the orphanage, well, the Umbrella Orphanage, and I gotta say, this guy was just so forgettable, and I don't remember his villainous motivation, and he turned into a diarrhea-yoking CGI zombie during the climax, and I just wanted this movie to just be over. The villain in the Five Nights at Freddy's movie is William Avman, aka Springtrap. Well, Springtrap doesn't appear in this movie, well, until the climax. But for what it's worth, his was pretty cool. Well, he is not intimidating, but his was a force to be reckoned with. And plus, this guy was evil enough to kill his own daughter. Well, at the end of the climax, the animatronics gets a wake-up call and realize that Springtrap is the one who killed them and put them inside of animatronics. And I honestly thought it was cool how they team up against Springtrap. and I mean it too, but I was not impressed. Well, if they did better with the horror elements, or maybe give the animatronics some personality like I expected them to do, then I would have been more satisfied with the ending of the movie. And that's how much damage this movie has gotten due to their unimpactful or horror elements. Well, this kind of horror elements may work on kids, but it does not work on young adults like me. But with that being said, the movie with the superior villain is Five Nights at Freddy's. Welcome to Raccoon City was pretty bad, like I am not going to even hold back. They did good with the horror elements, I give it that, but they didn't do the Resident Evil characters right, and the story is not that good, taken to the account. And nowadays, I see why video games movies had such a bad reputation. Well, as for the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, well, I thought they did decently fine. It was nothing that special, and I was not impressed, and it was not something that I consider rewatching again. Well, although I have seen other video games movies that is so much worse, so I would rather watch Welcome to Raccoon City and the FNAF movie again over the other not so good video game movie. Well, I'm not trying to be a hater, that is just my opinion. And plus, besides Coraline, there's other horror movie that did left a impactful impression out of me. When I first watched the movie Abigail, well, I was expecting it to be a yet another generic horror movie, but surprisingly, I end up having fun with it, as they do a lot more in the film. The animated Resident Evil movie called Death Island, well, a much better Resident Evil movie that I should be watching again right now. It did leave a good impression out of me as well, for how entertaining it was. Well, Megan and Megan 2.0 made a hell of a impression out of me, and these movies are meant to be stupid in a fun way. And even Hotel Transylvania, Goosebumps, and The Really Haunted Loud House left a good impression out of me. And these movies are not even horror, and that is not yoking good for the first Five Nights at Freddy's movie. Well, I think I have said enough here, and I don't need to say more. Okay, let's just get to the scores. Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City gets a 2 out of 10. The Five Nights at Freddy's movie from 2023 gets a low 5 out of 10. Okay, at first, I was going to give it like a mediocre 8 or a 7 out of 10, but if the movie is really not that scary, I didn't think it will deserve that higher score, so I thought about a 5 out of 10, but I prefer to stick with a 7 out of 10. But then, I just keep changing my mind for some reason, and I decided to give it a 6 out of 10. But then I was like, wait a minute, why a 6 out of 10? This movie is just nowhere near as watchable as the Avengers movies. So yeah, if you see, the more that I think about other different scores, my mind and guts keep on leading me in to a 5, and that is the only score that I have to give it. So I'm sorry guys, but my honest score for the first Five Nights at Freddy's movie is a low 5 out of 10. I didn't give it that just to be harsh. I'm just being a bit accurate of sharing how I felt for this movie in a satisfying standpoint. So, do I recommend watching the Five Nights at Freddy's movie overall? Well, I'm sure, why not? You won't regret it, but I hope the sequel is better. Alright, that was it for this Halloween comparison video, and that might be the last one, because there's no other horror movies that I need to compare, well, other than Ghostbusters, which it is not even horror. But with that being said, this video, that was the end of this Halloween special, and it's been fun, and I hope we can do something like that again next year. And also, I just got baptized not too long ago, and it was pretty great. I mean, God has been really good, and I respect him, and the heck, I would probably never make videos if it weren't for him. Well anyway, if you enjoyed this video overall, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and comment down below of which movie do you prefer and why. Well, if you prefer Resident Evil, Welcome to Raccoon City over Five Nights at Freddy's, then that is completely fine. We can still be friends. Well, to be honest with you, I don't know how long we're going to still be friends in a disagreement standpoint, but yeah. But just go ahead and tell me which movie do you prefer. It's your opinion anyway. Well, I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you guys next time.